And joining us now, Eric Snodgrass of Nutrient Ag Solutions. Eric, it's always great to catch up with you, my friend. How are you?
Hey, doing well. Just ready to get rid of all this rain and cold so we can actually do something here in the state of Illinois. But I've got good news there at least.
Yeah, I was going to say, we've had a lot of rain, we've had a lot of cold temperatures, a real slow start to planting. We're starting to get behind that 5 year average here by a decent number when it comes to quarter bean planting across the Corn Belt. But I know looking at this forecast, I'm hearing some rumblings of maybe some warmer temperatures, maybe some dry pockets. So, for our farmers who are tuning in, I know their big question is, when are we going to get enough of a window to get into the field? What are you seeing with the forecast, Eric?
It's funny though. I'll say this before I tell you the forecast. As terrible as April was, okay, in terms of the cold weather and in terms of the precipitation, for those that can store water in the soil, this bought time. In other words, we've been talking about drought risk later in the year due to the lingering effects of La Nina. And by the way, there's some changes in La Nina we should chat about in a second, but we know there's risk later. So any moisture you have now is good. And we've got a bunch of it coming through today on Thursday, then tomorrow on Friday through the central and eastern corn belt. It's in after that. The pattern's going to shift. All the attention is going to go to the Pacific Northwest into the northern plains. They're not going to get a break. It's going to be just continued cold and wet. That's in the Pacific Northwest and the northern plains of Canadian Prairie. Where I'm sitting here today, where I'll be wearing a jacket all day today, by next Monday, Tuesday, we're going to be deep into the 80s, probably cracking 90. And on top of that, we're going to go over a dryer. We're going to get this window that's going to open. Now, I think about that and think about everybody's ready to plant. And they know that what they've already chosen in terms of their relative maturities and things like that, they get it in now. They don't have to change that decision. So they're going to plant fast. What I'm concerned about is that means that this whole crop is all going to go through like the same crop stages at the same time because we're all going to plant it at one big swoop here in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, the pattern broke. It's breaking as we speak. We're going to start to see things open up. We're going to go from what felt like late winter to just summer temperatures in a heartbeat here, and it's going to be just go, go, go. And I feel for those growers that are just going to be nonstop planting, sacrificing sleep and meals and everything just to get it done. But that's where we are.
Well, and you mentioned how getting some of this moisture now could help alleviate some of the drought and be beneficial down the road. And you think about some of these really extreme drought areas. What have you seen as far as maybe some catching up? Northern Plains where it was really dry last year. They've had all this moisture. Parts of the hard red winter wheat belt, which have really been on their last life and need some rain. What have you seen as far as catching up on some of that drought stress we have in parts of the country?
Well, unfortunately, the drought stress that's been in that hard red winter wheat belt in the central and southern plains, the way it broke is the way drought sometimes does with severe weather. We're way above average on tornado reports and wind reports. And just lately, some of the storms have come through and put down some huge hail. So we've been breaking the drought with these big events. So, like parts of Oklahoma, yesterday got 7 inches of rain, whereas you couldn't buy a drop going back all the way to last October. The northern plains, it's where it's been really wet. They had 2 blizzards in April. They're soaked. The snow's melted, but still, soils are saturated. The biggest improvement area has been Nebraska. Now, Nebraska was having its driest start to any year on record going back to 1893. And since the second half of April, I mean, some places there have picked up over 10 inches of rainfall. And that's not the way you want to break a drought, but it doesn't. No one's going to complain. To get moisture is just, I mean, it's fantastic just to see that happening there. So the latest drought monitor, which came out here at the beginning of May, came out on the 5th of May today. It's not going to show the changes we've seen because it's a cumulative longer term statistic. So the improvements are not going to yet show up, but it didn't alleviate the longer term risk of the fact that we could still see drought redevelop, later this late spring and into early summer.
Now, you mentioned La Nina a little bit earlier as well, some changes to the La Nina pattern, it sounds like. So, what are you seeing there? Because I know that would be a concern for growers if we have a continued La Nina.
Yeah, we can link so much of what's happened lately to La Nina. It's not just La Nina, but that's been a big thing, right? So we've had cooling ocean temperatures in the Central Pacific, right on the equator, due to strong trade winds. That's translated into a nearly flat zonal jet across the Pacific. So we've been saying, just watch for one of those two things to give, and the whole pattern will break. It's like picking the peak in the market and then watching it cascade in the other direction. It's what it feels like in the atmosphere right now. So what we just saw was over the next probably 6 days, the Pacific jet is going to start getting real loopy. The trade winds back off. La Nina will loosen its grip for probably 15, 20, maybe up to 30 days. So it'll start to peel back, but that's normal. It does it. It kind of ebbs and flows as we go through spring. And normally La Nina is weakened through spring anyways. But the death grip it had on the March and April pattern is finally getting let go. So that's why things are going to break. The whole pattern is going to change. You could trace it to the Himalayas all the way over to Europe. That whole branch of the atmosphere is responding to these shifts around. So question is, how long does the break last? Does the atmosphere still have La Nina-like tendencies into summer, which would mean breadbasket drought risk? And do we get that third one going into next fall and winter? Because right now there's evidence that that could occur. So I would just tell you, all eyes need to be on the Pacific Ocean, both in the Gulf of Alaska and also along the equator, to see how those ocean temperatures respond to these shifts in the atmosphere, because that's really our only seasonal predictor for summer at this point.
I should ask real quick as well, South American weather. What are you seeing with the latest Brazil, Argentina, as we continue to watch that safrinha crop, especially in Brazil?
Well, this break in La Nina is going to try to return some better rains into the safrinha crop area, but we got to remember it's May, so better rains means 10 millimeters of rain instead of 5. Right? It's got a third of the normal precipitation that April has, and April's less than March. So in March and April, we saw the safrinha crop go over dry. Some places didn't get rain for 30, and some places up to 50 days. So what we're anticipating is that it's still going to be a big crop because it went in on time. But is it going to be bin busting massive? I think we've pulled back on the top end of some of those yields with drier conditions as of late. And now we're past the time period where rain could come through in a big way to make major improvements anyway.
Well, Eric, a lot of great insights, and obviously our farmers, they're they're starting to get up against the clock just a little bit, and they're watching that calendar very closely with the weather front. But we appreciate some insight. Any other final thoughts you want to share with us here today?
I think the big thing we're going to have to do just going forward is to monitor the risk in the big bread baskets of the world. So the Midwest, Russia, Ukraine, and then China. I think this La Nina could pose drought risk on the Russian wheat belt and Ukraine, despite the geopolitical problems going on there. China could be the wild card this year. So when we talk next, we'll get an update on that stuff.
Definitely. Well, with that, Eric Snodgrass of Nutrien, appreciate the time as always. Thanks for joining us here today, and we'll talk to you again soon, my friend.
Sounds good.